Tonight on Primetime Politics, a hero's welcome. The Liberal caucus welcomes its newest members into the fold, celebrating their parliamentary majority made possible by 5 floor crossers and 3 by-election wins. Coming up, we'll speak to NDP Leader Avi Lewis about this new government coalition. Also,
we were always, good friends, but now we're actually dating.
Forging stronger ties with Finland in the face of Donald Trump's America. What can Canada get and share with its Nordic neighbor? Former ambassador to the EU, Jeremy Kinsman, will join the program. And
we are a party that is pro-fight against climate change. Not as much as I would want, not as much as we did just a few years ago, but we're still fighting climate change.
Where progressive Liberals fit in Mark Carney's government. This is Primetime Politics. Hello everyone, I'm Michael Serapio. It was the start of a new era for the Liberal caucus in Ottawa today, with the Prime Minister walking into his weekly caucus meeting accompanied by 3 MPs. 1 returning and 2 new members welcomed with great cheer by their fellow Liberals. The 3 MPs are Tatiana Auguste, Dr. Danielle Martin, and Dolly Begum, the winners of Monday's 3 by-elections and whose addition to the Liberal ranks has given the Prime Minister a majority in Parliament.
It is a great pleasure to welcome 3 exceptional new deputies to our caucus. Welcome back, Tatiana. Yeah, Danielle, you've got to be. She's very. We need you in the shot. To welcome Danielle and Dolly as well. This grows our caucus, as you know. I just want to underscore that we started with the largest women's caucus in history in Parliament. It's now grown, and with Marilyn Gladu, now 71 women, we're just getting started. We have a great deal of work to do, and we approach that, comme j'ai dit hier, avec humilité et détermination. We approach it with humility and determination. Canadians have placed their trust in the government's plan. We now have reinforcements to help implement that, and we're going to go straight to work. So thank you very much.
And this is where things now stand in the House of Commons. The Liberals with 174 seats, Conservatives at 140, having lost 4 members to the government side, the Bloc at 22, the NDP at 6 after losing Laurie Idlau, and Elizabeth May, the lone Green seat in the House of Commons. Well, to talk about where things stand and a motion that his party introduced today, we're now joined by Avi Lewis, the recently elected leader of the Federal New Democrats. Mr. Lewis, Avi, thank you for being here.
Hi, Michael. Good to be here again.
Good to see you. So listen, I want to start this by noting that we will talk about your party's surveillance pricing motion. But first, I want to get your lay of the land here, because here we have the Liberals today celebrating their majority. They welcome to their fold 3 new MPs, 1 elected amongst them. But one of those entering the Liberal fold is a former deputy leader of the Ontario New Democrats. So what do you make of this Liberal majority and how it's been cobbled together?
Yeah, I mean, it is a majority government and things are going to change in Ottawa now. And I think it's troubling the way the majority has been assembled. I know the Liberals like to say they won it in the by-elections, but they barely needed the by-elections because of all the floor crossers. And this floor crossing phenomenon, I think, if you talk to experts in parliamentary history, I don't know it's ever happened before that a majority government has been assembled in a British parliamentary system from floor crossers. Canadians vote for the member of parliament and they vote for the party. And to see someone cross the floor, I mean, everybody knows the NDP has a policy against it. We believe if you want to change parties, resign, get a by-election, get a new mandate from the people. I worry about our relationship to our own vote and to democracy. We're living in a time of rising authoritarianism around the world. A 2-party system in the United States, where they're kind of interchangeable in some ways, led to the cynicism and the alienation that led to Donald Trump. And we need to have a vote that's meaningful, which is why we also need proportional representation, so we don't have 36% or 37% of the vote giving a government absolute power. And things like floor crossings, they just erode the sense that Canadians have that our vote matters. And so I think it's troubling. I really do.
Okay, you find it troubling, and you're right. Like, I mean, had it not been for these 5 floor crossers, plus these 3 by-election wins, there would be no Liberal majority. But as you know, there remains speculation that there could be more floor crossers.
Yeah.
Are you worried or concerned that one of your members might cross the floor?
No, I'm not. But I don't think anybody sees it coming when it comes. But we're a very small caucus. We meet in a minivan or whatever. Fill in your. I'm not going to go for Don Davies' press gallery speech level of comedy here, but yes, we're a small, intimate gathering. And I had a caucus meeting, my first full multi-hour caucus meeting today, and it's an incredible bunch of parliamentarians who have been doing really hard work with absolutely no support or resources since we lost party status compared to what we've had historically. So it's a very tight group of folks, and we all feel the same way about these floor crossings. And I just think that the Carney, it's now commonplace to say the Carney government has moved to the right. Obviously, these major pieces of legislation are passing with Conservative Liberal support. And so even the majority might not look that different when you think about the major piece of legislation that Prime Minister Carney has passed with the Conservatives. But now that you have a social conservative like Marilyn Gladue in a party with Dolly Begum, I just don't know what it means to be a Liberal anymore. And I think for the NDP, this is a moment for us to say to Canadians, we are the progressive party. We're the party of the left. You can count on us to stand up against the corporate oligopolies that sit astride our economy like an octopus and gouge us at the supermarket and at the gas pump. And we're the ones who are going to be fighting back for working class Canadians. And that Liberal monolithic party that spans the whole political spectrum, it seems to work for the powerful. Not the many. And so for us, it's clarifying.
Okay, and to that, your first order of business was to raise the issue of surveillance pricing.
Yeah.
You've introduced a motion around that today. We'll get to that motion in a moment. But as you yourself say, a lot of Canadians don't understand what surveillance pricing is all about. Why is it concerning for you?
Well, go shopping online. Open up an incognito private browser window on one device and your own browser window on another and do a test. And you'll see that you might see completely different prices at the same moment, the same person at the same time online. And this is happening in grocery stores too. In the United States, the Federal Trade Commission documented more than 250 specific examples where with the aid of big tech, retailers like big grocery stores, and we have a big problem with monopoly grocery in Canada, are teaming up with big tech to use your personal search history, AI now within every platform, your email program, your calendar is able to suck up all kinds of information about you, your shopping history, your income maybe, where you live, your postal code, whatever, and use it to give individualized prices to people, even in the retail store, in the supermarket. This is grossly unfair. It's super creepy. It's surveillance pricing, and it should be, if it's not already against the law, it must be against the law. And we've called on the Carney government to ban the practice.
Which is your motion that came up today.
And it was shut down today by the Liberals. We asked for unanimous consent on that.
But they say they are looking into it without necessarily supporting your bill. They say they're looking into what they call algorithmic pricing.
The same thing. Lots of different names for it. I think surveillance pricing is a better way of thinking about what's happening. You are being spied on. We know our devices are listening to us, are spying on us. You have a conversation with a friend about going to Mexico, you go to your Instagram, suddenly it's selling you trips to Mexico. How do we think this? We know this is happening, right? It should not be used to further price gouge from Canadians, especially when we're already suffering from a cost of living emergency. The Minister Solomon, the Minister of AI, literally said it wasn't his department. I don't know what his department is then, because AI is central, this technology, to data mining and to hoovering up massive amounts of data about us, and in fact the whole history of human accomplishment online, to fuel these large language models. That's a really big concern for us as well, which is why we have a humans first AI platform, unlike other parties.
Okay, so what do you do then? Like, I mean, you've introduced this motion. Again, we now have a majority government, so it's not going to go anywhere. What do you do with this?
Well, I think we raise the alarm among Canadians and we create popular pressure on the government. And I think the government is in a difficult position because they are so pro-AI. And I think Prime Minister Carney's speech at the Liberal Convention, again, was more sort of cheerleading. This technology is going to make our jobs more interesting. It's going to make life better for... No, it's not. I'm not saying put the toothpaste back in the tube. This use of language models has long been used for scientific research, for medical research. There's uses for this technology that are absolutely legit, and we need it. But the trillions of dollars that have been poured into the stock market bubble, massive rollout of data centers all over the United States and the world, increasingly in Canada, the only way that they get their money back, these giant tech companies, is that they eliminate millions and millions of jobs. This is a threatening technology that needs serious guardrails, and we need to be able to trust our government to actually stand up to big companies. That has never been their specialty. That's why we need the NDP.
Okay, so this is a conversation that will continue, obviously.
Oh, you bet.
But before we go, here you are making this argument to me. Fair enough, appreciate it. Love having you as a guest on our program. But at the end of the day, this is an argument that you could be making in the House of Commons. But you've said that you don't feel it as an immediate concern to get a seat in the House. Why is that? Is that lack of enthusiasm to actually spend full time here in Ottawa?
Oh, no. This has been my first week in Ottawa as leader. I've been in and out of the West Block, and walking the halls of power is a humbling thing. You feel it in your body, in your sense of purpose as a human being. Holy moly, this is real. This is really happening. This is where decisions get made that affect the daily lives of Canadians from coast to coast to coast. I'm eager to get in here. But we have a party that has some significant challenges. We're at the bottom of the electoral cycle, and we're still coming back. And the leadership campaign was an extraordinary experience of seeing the momentum and the excitement at our base. We raised a whole bunch of money in the leadership. We got a bunch more money to raise. And I'm excited to tour the country, not as a candidate, but as the leader, to spend time in people's lives in Canada, in rural communities, in the suburbs, where people are working harder and harder, finding it impossible to get by, and talking to Canadians about what we need to do to make this country work again.
Okay, you're a former broadcaster. You'll appreciate when I say to you I have less than a minute.
Okay.
But you are meeting the Prime Minister tomorrow. And I'm wondering what you make of Mark Carney and what your message will be for him tomorrow. I don't know. Well, first of all, I'm worried because, there have been so many people sitting in the Prime Minister's office that are floor crossers. I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea. I don't have a seat, to lend to the government, so there'll be no threat of that. There are huge issues facing our country. We're at a fork in the road historically, and I think the direction of our country, not taking a clear stand against war, doubling down on AI and big extractive projects, and losing a focus on the everyday emergency of people who are trying to get by and pay rent and pay for groceries. I want to see this government refocus on that, and we will be a relentless voice for that. Maybe it'll start politely in the Prime Minister's office, but it will continue with passion. Okay, Avi Lewis, we'll speak again, but for now, thank you for the time.
What a pleasure, Michael. Thank you.
Well, staying on the Hill, it was not just the government and New Democrats getting used to a new Liberal majority. The Conservatives also had their first weekly caucus meeting today. And to talk about that, we're now joined by CPAC's Andrew Thomson. So when we talk about the Conservatives, Andrew, fair to say, I think, that it was a more muted meeting than what we saw with the government.
Right. You have to remember this was the first Conservative caucus meeting since Marilyn Gladu's departure for the Liberals, and with reports that there could be more floor crossings on the way. It was also the first since those Monday by-election results that clinched the Liberal majority. Now, Conservatives were not necessarily expected to win those ridings, but they did perform a lot lower compared to last year's general election, and those results come with those continuing national polls showing a sizable Liberal lead. So a certain number of headwinds facing Pierre Poilievre's leadership, but the MPs that were talking to reporters today were offering a public show of support, and I should say that there were a few more actually stopping to speak with reporters than we normally see on caucus day. Those MPs saying that, look, Pierre Poilievre has grown the Conservative movement, he's got the support of the party membership, and they also say that caucus is fully behind the leader.
Our caucus is united behind Pierre Poilievre. We are focused on the needs of Canadians. We're focused on the high cost of living.
Caucus is united behind a leader that has a vision.
Pierre Poilievre and our Conservative colleagues are the last hope to save our country. That's why we're united behind Pierre Poilievre to lead us.
This is a long game that we're playing. We're prepared to do that work, but I absolutely stand behind Pierre Poilievre as our leader.
And speaking of the long game, Michael, we heard Pierre Poilievre in the House yesterday saying, I'm going to lead the Conservative Party in the next election. Now that we have a Liberal majority, that could be as far as 3 years away. But of course, we're going to keep following this leadership story in the more immediate future, especially if we see more Conservative MPs jumping over to the Liberals.
Yeah, and as you said, there's still speculation. Andrew Thomson, thank you very much. Well, let's talk about Finland's president now, as Alexander Stubb continued his visit to Canada today, dropping by Carleton University and the Finnish company Nokia's Ottawa, Canada campus. At both venues, talking up the Canada-Finland relationship and the role the two countries can play to support each other in a changing world.
Balance, essentially.
There's just so many things that we can do, and I think especially for you guys, because you're hedging and you're diversifying your economy. A country like Finland, as part of the European Union, I think is more of an asset than a reliability.
Now, yesterday, Canada and Finland signed an MOU, an agreement to strengthen cooperation in maritime and industrial capabilities. And as for the Prime Minister and the Finnish President, they continued to demonstrate the strength of their relationship, hitting the ice with the PWHL's Ottawa charge before breaking bread and then taking part in a working dinner last evening. Well, let's talk about all this. We're now joined by Jeremy Kinsman, Distinguished Fellow at the Canadian International Council. He served as Canada's ambassador to the European Union from 2002 to 2006. Jeremy Kinsman, good to see you again. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Michael.
Now, clearly, when we talk about President Stubb and Prime Minister Carney, these are two leaders who get along. They respect each other, so much so that during his speech in Davos, the Prime Minister did reference President Stubb. He used the term value-based realism that was coined by the Finnish president. And that's something that Mr. Carney says the world needs to lean into instead of pretending the rules-based international order still functions. Talk to us about how these two men are finding common ground as Donald Trump disrupts old alliances.
I think they have a certain symmetry of view as being, as you say, realists, understanding that the old world rules-based order that we've lived under and has guided us and reassured us since the Second World War is over. And though neither has been especially openly aggressive about the United States, whose role under Trump being the reason for that, everybody understands it. And we're exposed to the United States in, of course, a unique way. And we are, Canada, reaching out for partnerships. Carney speaks of diversification, and it can only happen in a big project sort of way. And I've always thought, Michael, that Canada had a special vocation for a deeper relationship with Europe. That geography matters less in the world today. And I believe that very much. And when Carney said some months ago that Canada is the most European of non-European nations, is an interesting thought. But I got it. I think it's probably true. And to get to the point of Finland, Finland is a country that shares an awful lot with Canada. I mean, the same social model. But more important than that, Finland is part of the Nordic Five. The Nordic Five, those five countries, are putting their efforts together to form a coherent group, which, as an ensemble, can be very much a partner for Canada. They also have an organization called the NB8, Nordic Five, and the three Baltic countries. They have a population together of about 33 million, a GDP, collective GDP, about the same size as Canada. And there's a very sense of symmetry of values, to get to Stubb's point. Mm-hmm. And I think that Finland is a terrific anchor in that likelihood that that group of countries within the European Union will become a major partner in Canada's efforts to diversify.
So a major partner with the Nordic Five, the NB8, as you say, as well. But there was talk. In fact, it was President Stubb who suggested that Canada considered joining the EU. He kind of repeated that today during a news conference with Melanie Joly in Ottawa. The Prime Minister says full membership for the EU is unlikely for Canada. But how advantageous would it be for this country to join the EU in some form when our nearest neighbor still talks about possible annexation?
Yeah, Well, I don't, joining the EU is a process, Michael, that is almost unendurable, because it means that all of your regulatory system has to be symmetrized with what the Europeans call their acquis. That is, all the regulations that have developed since the common market was formed back in, I think, 1958. And it's an arduous process, but it's necessary because they are increasingly an integrative union of countries. We could do that, except that many of those changes would then undo many of the agreements that we have with the United States, who remains our major market still, even though we want to diversify.
So is there any route for Canada?
What?
Would there be any route for Canada with Europe, do you think?
Well, I think what we can do is something different. I mean, the European Union is changing some of its big rules, and I think we could have some kind of status of associate membership. Stubb is not the first to say this. The French foreign minister mentioned it the other day. Others are thinking of it. I was an ambassador in Europe for a long time, including in Britain, and I've never seen in all those years Canada and Europe associated together in the thinking of people across the Atlantic as much as today. And they speak, when they speak of the future, they speak of Europe and Canada. And, I guess it's kind of flattering, but I think it's also can be very significant. If we're going to diversify seriously, we're going to have to diversify with a partner with whom we can have big projects. And the attractiveness of the Nordic five, if you want, and Finland, is that they have many of the same kind of, ambitions structurally that we do. They're very much concerned with security in the Arctic. And that, of course, is a major subset of what Canada wants to do. And I think that with those Nordic partners, we actually can do some real stuff in securing our shared Arctic, the North Atlantic, and developing it together.
Which underlines the importance of this visit by the President of Finland. Listen, Jeremy, always appreciate the insight. Thank you for this.
Okay, Michael, thank you.
Take care. So earlier in the program, we referenced the first Liberal caucus meeting since that party secured a majority on Monday. A majority made possible by 4 Conservatives who decided to cross the floor. Now, that made many Liberals happy, but it also put some progressive Liberals questioning their place in this newly formed coalition, something I talked about with Stephen Guilbeault, the former Environment Minister in the Trudeau government. We spoke this past week at the Liberal Party's National Convention in Montreal. Walking through the hallways of this convention center, clearly there is some discussion amongst some Liberals wondering out loud whether or not there is still room in the party for progressives like them. What would you say to that?
Oh, I definitely think there is room still room for progressives. I think that on a number of issues, the Liberal Party of Canada is very progressive. We could talk about a number of social issues, childcare, dental care, the protection of the LGBTQ rights. The Prime Minister was at the Pride Parade in Vancouver. He was at the rising of the rainbow flag on Parliament Hill. On nature and protecting Canada's beautiful natural ecosystems. The Prime Minister just announced almost $4 billion of new measures in the coming years. Canada is a world leader when it comes to protecting nature, when it comes to doing it in light of reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. Like, people from all around the world are looking at what we do in Canada on this front. So there's definitely still place for progressives in the party.
Well, of course, the discussion has been sparked around here because of Marilyn Gladu, a member of Parliament who espoused more social conservative viewpoints, certainly more socially conservative than the average Liberal. And her addition to the party is what has inspired this discussion. What would you say about her joining the Liberal Party and the Prime Minister opening the door for her?
I mean, I think, many of my colleagues, it did raise an eyebrow when I heard the news. She's had positions that are against many of our positions on social issues, on things like climate change. She was a vehement opponent of mine when I was environment minister, especially on climate change. That being said, I mean, she has taken the decision to join the Liberal Party of Canada. We are a party that is pro-fight against climate change. Not as much as I would want, not as much as we did just a few years ago, but we're still fighting climate change. We still have a suite of measures to tackle this existential crisis. We are a party that defends charter rights, that is very much so in favor of women's right to choose. So I believe Madame Gladue to be an intelligent woman. She must have realized that when joining the Liberal Party, this is the value she would be embracing.
Do you think that you, as one who is clearly a part of the more progressive side of the party, are going to be able to work with her as a fellow MP?
I mean, I can tell you that I have been able to work with all of the new recruits, all of the floor crossers that have come, whether it's Chris d'Entremont, Matt General, Laurie from the NDP. So I look forward to being able to have conversations with Madame Gladue, and hopefully we can work together on some of these issues.
Former Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault. Now you can see the full conversation and all our interviews from the Liberal National Convention on our website. You can also stream them on the CPAC YouTube channel. I'm Michael Serapio. That is our program for this evening. We'll see you again tomorrow. But as we leave, we do want to note a changing of the guard in Quebec, as Christine Fréchette was officially sworn in as Quebec Premier today, taking over from François Legault after winning the CAQ leadership race on Sunday. Have a good night.